And I can't fit a normal shoe on there yet, so my husband's size 11 slipper works just fine. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danniella Ewen, and I am the Executive Director of Human Resources for Colorado Springs School District 11. And I brought with me one of my lovely directors. So this is Karey Urbanski. She's our Director of Human Resources for all things secondary. So in human resources for us, we sort of break things up by the elementary school level and by the secondary level. And so Karey oversees secondary, and we have another gentleman who oversees elementary.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know how tough it is to find a guy in human resources? I know, I've been trying.
And we have two. We actually have two. So you come see us, we'll take care of it. So we're here today just to talk to you a little bit about human resources. What is it? Why should you get an HR degree? What can you do with that HR degree? What are the benefits? What do we do? I think, I always start off by saying the thing about HR is that you have absolutely no idea what you're going to get to deal with that day. You can walk in the room and think that you've got these 10 things and this is what Danny's going to do all day, and I might not ever even touch one of those 10 things. So it's just HR. It's the nature of kind of what we're doing. At School District 11, we have about 28,000 students and roughly 4,000 employees. And those 4,000 employees cover anywhere from our teachers to our, what we call executive professionals. So those are like our principals, our directors, our hiring managers. That's sort of that exec professional role. The teachers, and then we have education support professionals, or ESP. And those are our classified employees. So those are like our teachers' aides, our clerical staff, our bus drivers, the people who work in the buildings as building managers. We sort of have three sets of employee groups, and then that fourth employee group is our substitute workers. So those are the ones who are guest staff teachers, guest staff employees who go in and help when a teacher can't be there or when a clerical employee can't be there. That's sort of the makeup of Colorado Springs School District 11 and sort of what we do. In our Human Resources Department, we have 17 employees. We wish we had a lot more, but we've got 17 employees covering just a wide variety of things that happen in human resources. So we can talk just a little bit, kind of just my background. And when I went to school, I have a double major in marketing and management. When I was getting my college degree, human resources wasn't an option. I couldn't major in HR when I was getting my degree. So I majored in marketing and management. I fell into human resources sort of accidentally, and I loved it. I absolutely became passionate about just the ability to work with employees, to help them through all kinds of things, whether it's getting the job, staying on the job, working through benefits, working through workers' compensation, employee relations. I just sort of fell in love with it. So now I've been doing it for almost 18 years. And I don't know that I can see myself really doing anything else. This is sort of where my passion is. So I'm going to let Karey kind of talk about her background a little bit, where she is.
All right. So again, thank you for having us today. So I think, between Danny and myself, our backgrounds are a good example of how your career can progress in so many different areas in HR, because there's so much to HR. So when I started, I did not go and get an HR degree. I got a psychology degree, graduated with a bachelor's from UNC, but I thought I wanted to go out and be a counselor and help people in the counseling world. On my first couple of interviews, I found out that maybe that's not the right fit for me. And so I also, similar to Danny, I fell into HR by starting at the bottom up. I started as an HR receptionist, bringing in employees for a nonprofit company. I then went into a role where I was a recruiter for a construction staffing company. And I can tell you, I don't know much about construction, but I know how to hire people. So again, it just kind of shows the progression of how you can work through HR. I then worked in county government in a couple of different roles with employee relations, classification systems, pay structures, as well as labor relations. And then I ended up moving here to Colorado, and now I'm the HR director for secondary education. So again, over the span of 17 years, there's been a lot of time, a lot of opportunity to learn so many different facets of HR. And that's kind of the great thing about HR, is that you might have a passion for benefits or employee relations, but truly the bottom line is that no day is really ever going to be the same. They're truly always different. So from that perspective, we definitely have a great range of different experience. So I know when we were looking at working with the university here to figure out what do we want to talk about, one of the questions is, what are the benefits for students to obtain a HR degree? And so we have a couple of items that we wanted to go through. So for me, obviously I started with a reason that I wanted to help people. Thought it was going to be in counseling, but I kind of look at my role that while I'm not necessarily an official counselor, I help people at work. I help people navigate the workplace, whether it's my supervisors, my applicants, or the employees that maybe we're working through employee relations issues. Really, a degree in HR helps you build your relationship building and working with people and developing people. So it's a great way, again, HR is a people job. You have to like people, you have to want to work with people in order to work in HR. Another great benefit is that collaboration piece and kind of the skill of that mediation skill almost, where you're working with departments, you're problem solving with them, you're helping them learn how to collaborate together so that it's not just these silos of one department wants one thing and another department wants another thing. So again, it really helps you to kind of force or help you learn how to essentially grow your skills in collaboration and helping to see different perspectives. I will also say, and I'm going to do a nice big plug for D11 right now, District 11, we do have a recruiter position open right now. It closes today at, I believe, midnight. That's why I'm saying it. We are hiring for a recruiter to hire teachers. So again, from that perspective, you're going to learn a lot about the hiring process, onboarding, and getting employees acclimated to the building. So while I say that, while District 11 has an opportunity, I can tell you that there is a lot of growth in HR jobs. Again, a lot of them may have to start from entry-level type positions, but at the same time, companies, whether it's private sector or nonprofit or public sector, companies are learning the value of HR and have continued to understand the value of HR. And so you'll see a lot of those entry-level or mid-manager type positions. So again, there's a lot of opportunities for jobs out there for qualified HR candidates that understand the basics of employment law. I'll also say I think that myself and Danny's probably a great example of the fact that your career can move pretty quickly in terms of career progression and the different levels that you have the opportunity to experience. So I would say that as long as you're willing to learn, you're open to feedback, and you're willing to try new opportunities, and maybe you think you're not that interested in learning about workers' comp or benefits, but once you learn it, again, it's a great skill set to have, because being well-rounded in HR can definitely help a fast-track progression in HR as a field. Another great benefit around HR is obviously, as you go, probably going through the courses, if that's where you're at, is that a lot of HR, I would say 90% of HR is legally based. So there's going to be some type of legal framework that you're going to be able to rely upon to give you guidance. But I will say that there is also a lot of gray. So it's working within the legal framework and the gray areas. So again, as long as you understand those concepts, you have a good knowledge of having that legal background. I think the next piece I wanted to speak to around HR is that, I'll use myself as an example, because I think I'm a good example on this one. When I started off my career in HR, I was really focused on making sure everything was the way I wanted it to be in its nice little box so that I could do the work to get that piece of work completed. Well, that's not how HR operates, as Danny's mentioned. Nothing is ever going to be the same in HR. So a career in HR, a degree in HR, it really gives you a big picture perspective. You don't get to stay in that little box that might be comfortable. It really makes you, it forces you to kind of look outside of what you want to do, but also have you take other perspectives. So again, that continues to be a career progression for me as we continue to grow in our careers. But again, I think that's something good to kind of keep in mind, because when you start off your career, you think it's going to be one way. And then once you start to get into the dynamics of the career, that's how you understand that it's good to have that big picture to move forward. I think for me, and certainly for Danny, I know I can speak, is that, you know, like I mentioned, I started off with the goal of wanting to help others, but it's really about a satisfaction. When you go home after a long day, what does it look like when you get home? How did you help that applicant? How did you help that employee with a really stressful situation? Because we know that life happens. So there's our work world, then there's our personal world. And sometimes, you know, we have to help people navigate what's going on in their personal lives so that they can function at work. So it's a really good way to still be able to help people, not just, hey, get your job done and let's, you know, show up on time. It's about what's going on. What are resources that are out there for you as an employee, whether it's through an employee assistance program or sometimes around that. So it helps you to navigate, helps employees, to navigate when needed. You know, I think the last piece I wanted to speak to, and I know Danny may want to speak more about this possibly, is really there's a strategic concept, obviously, to HR in terms of the fact that, you know, we are helping the company move forward and making strides for the employees, as well as to make money or to educate children, whatever your company's purpose is. You know, you have a piece in that when you're in HR. You get to help dictate and navigate how that's going to look, not only for the profit side or your company's mission, but also how that impacts the employees. So there's that great strategic role that you get to play in HR. But it's also, it's twofold too. There's a balancing act. So there's the balancing act of how do you in HR balance the needs of helping the company make money or the needs of the employees. So, you know, you really do have two hats. You're working on protecting the company and protecting what's going on to make the company profitable, but you also are focused on ensuring that employees are taken care of as well. So there's a lot of different reasons. So in terms of why it's great to get into HR and what your HR degree can do for you. So those are just a couple of main points that I wanted to speak to.
I think, and if I could just add a few benefits, I think of HR. I think, you know, years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, people didn't really see HR the way that they see HR now. And now we are a strategic partner at the table for a lot of things. Not just trying to keep employees out of trouble or trying to keep an employer out of trouble for not treating an employee the right way, but how do we recruit and retain, right? In a world now where there's so much access to social media and getting your name out there, how do you recruit and how do you retain? And that's really key, because with the new generation, you know, when we look back at our parents, you know, my dad had the exact same job for like 35 years of his life. My mom had 2 jobs her whole entire life. Today's, you know, we don't necessarily see that as much. People change positions a lot more frequently and they go through careers a lot more frequently. And so I think people are looking at HR saying, but how do you help us recruit and get the people here to staff our businesses, but how do you also retain them and keep them here? And there's a lot of work that goes into that. And I think one of the nice things about HR is that there's HR no matter where you go. So I've worked in the finance industry, I've worked in a hospital setting, I've worked in hospitality, I've worked in nonprofit, and now I'm working in education. I didn't have any education background. I'd never been a teacher. I'd never worked in a school before coming into it. But human resources is human resources, no matter what industry you're in. Certain things will shift in terms of policies or practices, but at the end of the day, HR is HR. You have a lot of opportunity to go into a lot of different career fields, not necessarily having to be in that field. And I like that idea. I like that I can go do a lot of different things. I love my time in hospitality. I love my time in healthcare, and now I'm in education. So I think that gives you a lot of opportunities to open the doors to a lot of different things. A lot of people who start in HR may not stay in HR. When they start in HR, then they get into this career field that they really like or they really enjoy, and then they move on to do other things. You know, we've had principals come work for us in HR. They think they are done being a principal and they want to come be a director and do what Karey does. And maybe they stay in that role for a while, or maybe they move back into the classroom. So there's just a lot of opportunity for movement there. I think the other nice thing about human resources is that there's a lot of things within HR. So whether you like compensation, that's probably my strength and my passion. I'm really good at compensation and creating salary plans and understanding that. Karey is second to none in employee relations. Best employee relations person I've ever worked with in my 18 years. She just knows employee relations like the back of her hand, and she knows how to deal with employees. Some people like that, some people don't like that. Then you've got the benefit side of things. You've got the workers' comp. You've got the ADA, which is the Employment with Disabilities Act, so you're doing accommodations for people. You've got leave, whether that's vacation, sick, you've got recruitment, you've got retention, so there's all these different aspects of human resources. We even have a person who, she's sort of our HRIS person, or our data person, so she doesn't really do a lot of the recruitment and things that Karey and I do, but all she does is the data. She's just strictly focused on the data, and we need those people too. So I just think there's a lot of different pieces to HR that I don't think everybody always understands. So I think that's a huge benefit of coming in and doing that. There is a huge balance. You're always trying to balance recruiting the right people, but then keeping the right people in the right positions. We all know that fit is a really crucial thing when you get into a job. You've probably experienced it before. I know I have. I've taken a job before and I thought, this is what I'm going to do and this is going to be great. And a couple weeks in, I'm going, what in the world was I thinking? This is not the world for me. And so sometimes it's about the fit, and that's a game we have to play sometimes of really trying to figure out putting the right pieces in place so that we do the right things, whether it's students or whether it's other employees. And so there is this sort of fine line you're walking sometimes. And I know a lot of times people will say to me, but HR is easy, right? It's black or white. It's either a yes or a no. You either did right or you did wrong. It's so gray because not every situation is going to be the same thing. Yes, if Danny got in trouble today because she didn't treat a kid right, that sounds like it could be the same with anybody who doesn't treat a kid right. But you gotta look into the factors. What went on? What happened? What was the issue? How can we handle it? And so I think that's also some of the fun part for Karey and I is trying to figure out what does that look like and what is the right solution that's the right solution for the school, the employee, the employer. And so there is a lot of, just a lot of analytical thinking that goes into it and really trying to figure out what that should look like. So, from my perception, and again, passionate about human resources, but there's just a lot of great things that go into HR. You can really leave at the end of the day feeling like sometimes I made a difference today. And I think that's a really important piece as well. So, do we want to have questions about that, or do we want to finish the other first?
How many questions about benefits of HR degrees or careers in HR?
So how many departments are there within HR where you guys are? I mean, or is it just one department?
So I think it depends. It depends on the organization you're in. So I've worked in organizations before where they have just HR and it's everything. I've had departments before, like right now where we work, HR is sort of all things employee relations, recruitment, leave, but we have a separate department that handles benefits. Benefits doesn't fall under HR. That's not always common, except in education. In education, it's very common to have benefits be a part of the finance department. In a lot of other industries, benefits is part of HR because it is just another piece of the equation, right? In education, workers' comp and benefits are sort of one department under finance. In some industries, payroll is a part of human resources. In some industries, it's not. So it really just depends on the industry and the organization and how they set it up. Yeah. I think with payroll, a lot of times they separate payroll out from HR because you want to have some checks and balances and accountability. In HR, we're setting up all the stuff that's going to pay you. We're going to put you in the system. We've got to make sure your name is right, your taxes is right, your social security number is right, all those good things. And so they keep payroll separate from that because they don't want the same department setting all that up and then paying you. There's not a lot of checks and balances. So a lot of times payroll is separate from HR.
How do you see an HR degree fitting people now versus getting, just like you said, falling into that position and moving up?
I think the way I would answer that is, again, so when I got my degree, HR wasn't seen the same way that it's saw today. Today, people understand the importance of human resources. They understand the strategic side that it plays. They understand how complex and complicated laws are getting now, right? We have a lot more laws surrounding human resources than we ever had before. So I think the benefit of getting a degree in that is that you have that basis. You have that foundation of really understanding. It's my understanding with some of the degrees programs that I've seen now, there's a lot of pieces that go into the legal side of it and really understanding the law and what's right and what's wrong and the complexity of that sometimes. So I think the benefit today is that you have that foundation already established.
So I would just add to that absolutely, even if you haven't quite had the HR experience, for my entry level position, I would certainly look at somebody without the experience but with a degree. Absolutely.
So that brings me on. Sorry.
Oh, good.
I think you're.
Yeah, so my question is, how do you stay abreast the new policies and new laws? Like, how closely do you work with the Department of Labor? Like, how does that work? Is that research that you guys have to do, or are you part of a network where that gets disseminated down to you?
So I think it's a combination of things. I think it's research that we do on our own.
Okay.
I think it's organizations that we are part of. Both Karey and I have certifications, special HR certifications. So there are two main human resources groups. There's what's called SHRM or SHRM. That's the Society of Human Resource Management. They have their own certification. Karey and I both have that certification. And then there's another organization called the Human Resources Institute, or HRCI. They also have a certification. Karey and I both also have that. And so that's a way to stay abreast. So we have social networking, we attend conferences, we attend a lot of different professional development and different trainings and stuff on that so we can stay abreast. And then it's also like with SHRM. SHRM is really good about, if you're a member with SHRM, they're constantly blasting you with emails about, hey, did you hear about this new law? Or what do you think about this? This is in proposal to be changed. You know, the big thing was less than a year ago, the huge thing was that for the very first time in like 15 or 20 years, the Department of Labor was looking at changing the minimum salary requirement to be exempt versus non-exempt.
Yeah.
So a significant amount of work went into that employers had to do. We had to look at employees and we had to say, well, okay, well, do they make X dollars? If they are making X dollars, do they have all these other tests around them to say they should be exempt? We did all this work, and a lot of employers already put it in play, for the DOL to then come back out and say, oops, the judge put an injunction on it. We think it was too fast, too quick. They more than doubled what that salary test basis was. And a lot of employers were going, wait a minute, we can't sustain that. We can't financially, we'll close, our doors will have to close. We can't. So there was an injunction put on it by a judge.
Yep.
And then we just got a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago or so, that said that injunction has been put in play permanently. And the Department of Labor has scratched the bill and they'll start over from scratch. So I think it's still going to come back at some point. I just don't think it's going to come back as much as it went.
Yeah.
I think it'll come back at a lower rate and employers will still have to look at it. Because again, that number hasn't been changed in 15, 16 years, I think. So for us, the way we got wind of that is that you start getting these blasts and then you start doing your own research. You stay abreast in it for our certifications, the certifications that Karey and I have, we have to earn so many credits per year to keep them. You don't just get them once and then you have to keep them forever. And so part of that is just the PD around, getting those credits. So.
And I would say a lot of the, like currently for SHRM, they have state chapters and then local chapters. So, we both belong to the Colorado Springs SHRM. They have standard meetings and professional development and legal updates. There's a legal update coming in November as well. So that's a great way to kind of hear the employer relations side and hear some of the court updates that have happened to keep yourself abreast.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Okay, so right now I'm a paid member for Mile High SHRM in Denver. I was looking for one for Colorado Springs, but could never find it.
CS SHRM, Colorado Springs SHRM.
So it's just CS, because the first one I came across was Mile High, so I joined them. I live down here. I try to catch a few things.
They hold monthly meetings, and they hold them at the building off of the big old Intel building off of Gardner Douglas Road. Their meetings are held in there at the Aspen Point cafeteria.
Now, me joining them for Mile High, could I still come to one down here, or would I have to turn around?
They would ask that you be a member to attend most of their meetings. They'll usually give you a couple just to come and see if you want to be a part of it. But then they would, and I want to say that the dues are 60 a year, 75 a year.
Is there 150?
Mile High.
Yeah, Mile High.
Yeah, Colorado Springs SHRM.
Yeah, I'm still willing to pay it, trying to find it.
And they're all kind of different. So the Colorado Springs SHRM is 75, but the state SHRM that Karey, or national SHRM that Karey and I belong to, I think it's 170 a year. So they're all each a little bit different.
How do you get credits for that to stay active?
So various things. We can get credit by attending various types of professional development. We can get credit by providing that professional development and actually giving trainings. Karey and I go out and give trainings to both within our district and without our district on various things. You can get credit that way. You can take classes, volunteering. Yeah.
Okay.
There's lots of different conferences, and when you attend a conference, you can get credits by the various breakout sessions that you attend at that conference. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can. I think you had a question.
Oh, well, typically, you know, the stigma is it's hard to get into HR if you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we sit and speak with students, you know, and they're looking at that as a downfall, what would you recommend in regards to getting over that hump?
Great question.
Wow. Great
So,
question.
You know,
Look, I gave her the really hard one.
I know. The box here. I think that, you know, to answer that question for students that find that hurdle is, you know, I always go back to your knowledge, skills, and abilities. So whenever we're doing interview prep and preparation with candidates about how to go into interviews, you really always need to focus on the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you bring to a position. So the fact that you have a degree or in a degree program and, you know, you learn the value of certain EEOC laws or the ADA, and there's questions or, you know, any type of behavioral interview-based question around that, you know, those students can use their education on the fact that you're aware of it, you have the knowledge of it, and if you haven't applied that skill set yet, here's how you might apply it in a certain circumstance. So, you know, I would just kind of look at, you know, it's about that interview preparation. But I think also, you know, things like emailing the recruiter or trying to connect with the recruiter. I'm big on LinkedIn. So we really use LinkedIn a lot. I would encourage, you know, the students that maybe don't have the experience yet or but have the degree to really connect with that employer to do their research, try and connect with, you know, the recruiters or the HR director of a company just so that they kind of see the face. I've actually looked on LinkedIn for people to hire for my recruiting position. I've had a leave specialist position. So it's really about just making that connection. And so I would just suggest those concepts as well.
And I would also suggest do your research.
Yeah.
Don't walk into an interview without knowing what that company is about. Do your research. Show that you've researched that company and that you understand, hey, I'm applying for D11. This is what they're about. Largest school district in Colorado Springs, 28,000 kiddos. All that stuff's readily available and, you know, with a couple of quick clicks on our website. So I would say do your research and know that. The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to start at the entry level. Sometimes you got to start at the entry level to get your foot in the door. I'll tell you, in our human resources department, I can think of 3 people just off the top of my head right now who are sitting in some of our recruiter positions, but started as our HR receptionist. And so sometimes it's okay to just start at that entry level. It may not be exactly what you want, but start there, do a good job there. People take notice of that, and then it's easier sometimes to be promoted at the level.
To that point, I worked for D11 for 8 years,
Oh, nice.
and I started as a sub.
Yeah.
And I stepped for a whole year until I got a permanent position.
Yeah.
So to your point, so, you know, sometimes you gotta start down at the bottom to work your way through the different levels, you know.
And what a great experience for you too, because you get to sub and really understand what it's like in the school district or what it's like in a school or in a department. And that can kind of tell you, this isn't where I want to work, or yes, this is really where I want to be. And so we tell people substituting is a great way for you to fill out the organization and really know if that's where you want to be.
You have a lot of, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's okay. For me, it's been hard to even find a male in HR. That is one of the unicorns of my life.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to find out is I came out of the military in 2015. I did a lot of work that would push towards HR. Like I was a victims advocate. I also was EO. I was also EO, which is EO, and I was also a command financial advisor. You know, work with soldiers to get their finances back on track, or if they just want to start trading everything. I have all this stuff, and I did them for almost 7 to 9 years between all of them, and it's even hard to get an interview for me. I mean, I stay all in Fountain, but I work in Denver.
Mhm.
Denver was the only person to ever say, hey, we'll call you back for an interview. I have applied all over the place, and it's like impossible.
So I would say a couple of things to that. The first thing I would say to that is that College Springs is in a good place right now, that the employment level here is really low. It is not uncommon for human resources to see 30, 40, 50 applications for a position that we open. Not every position, but some clerical type positions, we would love to have 30 or 50 for our education assistants. But for a clerical, it's not uncommon sometimes to see that many. And I think one of the challenges for you, and what I would caution you on, is that you have to really make sure that you write a resume that doesn't showcase the military side of that, but how that military experience can translate into an out-of-military job.
Yes.
And while you know that XYZ in the military is very common to what we might do in HR, we don't necessarily know that if we're looking at the resume. You have to figure out how to write that resume well enough to show us that when you did X, Y, and Z, it really matches with our ABC. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's
well,
really-
you have a minute after this. Can you take a look at mine? Oh,
What I will do is I will be more than happy to give you my card.
Yeah, I'll
and you can
email it.
email
I'll
to me.
email it to you while I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
I keep it with me just for spare.
Yeah.
Keep a portable printer too, just in case.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
I don't play.
Any other questions about the benefits side of things?
What is your company tuition assistance? Is it still 1,000?
It's up to $12.50 now for our education support professionals. So for our ESP, our classified staff, they can get up to $12.50 a year. We don't have tuition assistance for our exempt professionals.
Oh, wow, okay.
Most of that just because 95% of our positions within exempt professionals require a degree anyways. So
What would you say is the most challenging thing about HR?
oh, man.
I knew that was coming.
How would I answer that? I think we might both have different answers because we both deal with very different things. I think sometimes the most challenging thing for me is never really know what I'm walking into at that moment.
Sure.
And sometimes I tend to be, so this is where Karey and I are very different, right? We joke about this a lot. Karey is a processor. When you tell her something or you feed her something, she has to process that. And she has to run with that, and she has to think about it. I am not a processor. When you say something to me, I just want to make a decision. Let's go, right? That gets both of us in trouble at times. So that's why we are beneficial to one another, because at times I can tell Karey, let's speed this up, we gotta go. Or she can say, Danny, you need to take a step back and we need to slow down. And so sometimes I think the hardest thing in HR is that people oftentimes want instant gratification. Dannielle, I want to terminate him tomorrow. Right now. Let's do this. Wait a minute. I got to know the details. Why are we terminating? We're just terminating. He didn't do right. So it's sometimes in HR you just can't have that instant gratification. We have to take our time. We have to do our due diligence. We have to research it. Because I want to protect both the employee, I want to protect the employer, and particularly in education, I want to protect the students. Right? So sometimes we just can't react as fast as what others might like us to react.
Sure.
So I would say that's one of my hardest things.
So I would say, for me and probably in the HR or employee relations field is really working with an employee that, is just not able, despite all the efforts and supports and guidance and trainings, really when it's not a good fit, those are probably some of the biggest challenges, is just trying to get that employee to understand, help them to, understand that they have hard choices to make in order to, keep moving forward. And I would say that those part of the hardest part of HR for me is having to come to that decision to really say that, it's time to end this. So, yeah. Now, what I like about HR, outside of the benefits, is, it's my favorite thing about HR is I really love recruiting and going back to a lot of the job fairs and going to the teacher schools and really looking, for that right candidate, the students that are excited and ready to come and teach our kids. Because I have kids in education and going to school right now, so you kind of have a different filter too when you have kiddos of your own or no kids and have some close relationships with students. So you really got to put yourself in that field and kind of think like, yeah, I would love to have that person in front of either my niece or my son at home. So I love recruiting. I think it's the most fun that we can do in HR, and especially when she lets me offer contracts and hire people on the spot. That is my best part of HR. I love those days.
And I love the data. You know, I'm a data guru. I'm an Excel guru. I know computers and software programs better than most. And I love being able to use Excel and run reports and create data, be able to analyze that and see what that looks like. And I love compensation, and I love being able to put together salary plans and that kind of thing. So I like recruitment, but I let Karey go. And I love training. I like doing this stuff. I love being out and doing trainings. I would conduct trainings every day if they let me.
How do you handle separating like your personal feelings towards an incident or maybe something that was brought up to you, so that you're really able to look at it from a neutral party?
So hard, so hard. And I think, is there ever a time where we can completely remove ourselves? Probably not. Because here's what I've always said to people. The day that I stop caring if I have to terminate somebody is the day I shouldn't do HR anymore, right? If there's ever a time that comes when I terminate somebody and I'm just like, okay, and then I move on, that's not a good place to be in. So I think there always has to be some emotional human factor to it. But I think the more important thing for us is that we always have to focus on it from a position perspective. That's a position within our district that requires you to do X, Y, Z. If you're not doing that, then that position isn't being successful. And at the end of the day, at District 11, we have a motto that says, we add value to the handshake each and every day because our students deserve the very best. And that when we talk about that handshake, we're talking about that graduation handshake. When they walk across that stage and shake our superintendent's hands, we know we've done right by that student. And so, and we've added value to their life by helping them get to that place. And so I think it's looking at that position and saying, is the position doing what's right and is it beneficial to the district? And it's hard. It's never easy because there's always a personal side of things, right? Always. And so we try to be sympathetic or empathetic, and we try to look at all factors. And that's why at D11 we have a pretty stringent disciplinary action process. We have a plan. We almost never just walk in and terminate an employee on the first offense. Almost never. I'm not going to say never because there's always extenuating circumstances. But we have a process, right? We want to try to do a conference memo. We want to work with that employee, and we want to say, did we give that employee the right tools to be successful in their job? Did we train them? Did we provide them with the right policies? Did they know what they were supposed to do? And we want to try to progress because we would like to salvage them. We'd like to try to make that better. But like Karey said, sometimes you have to come to the realization that that's just not going to happen.
I would agree. I mean, there's no easy way to balance that other than, unfortunately, this is where we're at. This is the role. And you do really have to put your feelings aside. We've had some challenging situations where, we'll go home at the end of the day and it's hard to leave it at work because they are challenging. So, it's that separation of just doing what's healthy for you and just knowing that you're doing right for the students is how, we work through a lot of that as well.
We just wanted to mention just real quickly some of the different types of jobs that if you're getting an HR degree that you can do. There's so many different things. So there's recruiters. Those are the people who are going out to our job fairs and trying to sell you on our district and see if you're interested in coming. Part of the recruiter's job oftentimes involves interviewing people. Are you really interviewing them and getting what you want from them to see if they'd be a good fit? We have the employee relations side of things. Those are the people who are really dealing with the not so great stuff sometimes, the disciplinary actions, the unprofessionalism, the time and attendance issues, that kind of stuff. You have organizational development and training. Are we providing, I said training is also one of the things I love the best. I love going back out and just training on whether it's Excel or whether it's how to be a good employee and whatever that might be. So there's trainers who provide that kind of professional development. Compensation. We have a director of compensation. She's the one who sets all of our salaries and she evaluates resumes and she looks at those. And we have very solid salary structures in place that are relatively transparent. And in District 11, there's no negotiation really. A lot of people try to negotiate with me, but at the end of the day, we have a very transparent system that says if you have X years of experience, this is your rate of pay. You might be the best employee out there, but if you have X years of experience, this is your rate of pay. And we have to be that way from a district perspective, just because we're paying you with taxpayer money. So benefits, those are the ones who work with medical, dental, vision, life insurance, short-term disability, long-term disability. Workers' comp sometimes can fall in HR, sometimes not. HRAS, that's our data person. That's the one who's really dealing with the system behind how we put people into the system to get them paid and get them tracked for their addresses, make sure everything's right. We have an EEOC, which is our equal opportunity employment, and so that's dealing with things like harassment, sexual harassment, discrimination, those types of things. And then you have consultants. There are a lot of people who are in HR work as consultants, and they consult with other departments on how to run their department, or they consult with other organizations. So there's just sort of this really wide, broad range of, you could be just a receptionist, you could be just a person who works in the file room, and District 11 2 years ago converted to electronic files, so we don't have any paper personnel files, we're all online and electronic, and we have a person who really just deals with that, whether that's in, scanning the data in or working within the data. So there's just all these, just sort of a wide range. And they're changing every day. So.
Any questions? Thoughts? All right, so are you all in the HR programs? Are you considering HR programs, instructing?
No, I'm in.
You're in.
No, I'm
You're
in
in.
HR program. I'm in it to the end.
Great.
Yeah, I'm headed for that BA.
Good for you. Yeah.
So I'm in recruitment for students.
Okay.
So if someone was a prospective student and they were thinking about the HR field, what kinds of things would I look for that they're interested in? Like they come in and say, hey, tell me a little bit about HR, and I say, okay, tell me what you're interested in. What kinds of things should I look for in their interests that would lead me to think they'd be a great fit for you?
Sure, that's a great question. I think I'll go first, and I'll let you jump in. See,
You took
I took
both
a good
of them.
one. I know. I'm trying to be good here. I would say just going back to what we talked about, really, do you like working with people? If you don't hear out of someone's mouth that they want to help people or work with people, then they might not be a good fit. If they're going to come to you and say, I only like computers and working alone and I don't want to collaborate, they're probably not going to be a good fit in HR, because in HR, we don't operate in silos. We have to work with people. We have to work with departments. So I would say the first thing you definitely want to look for is just that wanting to help and that passion for helping others, whether it's navigating a job or the recruitment world. So I'd start with that from that perspective.
I think patience. I think you have to have patience in human resources. I think if you're a person who doesn't have that or doesn't want to have that, I think you're going to struggle at times. I think if you're a person who doesn't understand confidentiality, because while we haven't touched on that today, that is everything in our world. If we don't know how to be confidential, we're in trouble. And so if you have a person who just can't understand that, and the thing about HR, right, is that when you're in HR, people know you know, and they want to know. And so they talk to you, and they try to get you to tell them all the things you know. And that can wear on people, and that can be a heavy weight to bear sometimes. And so I think patience and that ability to understand confidentiality, I think that ability to be engaging with people, because at times, even at our front desk, which we've been very fortunate over the last 4 and 5 years, we've had some really good HR receptionists. They have to diffuse things at times, because there are people who walk in there and just unleash. No fault of that HR receptionist, she may not have ever met the person, they may not have me. But that's the first place they go to. And so you have to have that ability to be engaging and calming and just have sort of at times a pretty easy, patient personality, I think.
I would add too, just to that is, flexibility or adaptability.
Yeah, it seems like that's a big
Yeah, because again, learning through me, that wasn't first nature for me when I first started out in HR. And I've had to learn how to become flexible and adaptable. And, thank goodness I did, or else I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So I think, just kind of having some questions that's around, how do you deal with change? How quickly can you, change your course for the day if you're your boss comes in and says, do X, Y, Z. Those types of things are things you're gonna wanna pay attention to.
I have very few days in my life that the superintendent doesn't call me. And when that call comes through, I pretty much know I'm not gonna finish what it is that's sitting on my desk at that moment. And you have to be okay with that and be okay with being able to stop at that point, know where you stopped at that point, and be able to come back to that.
Lots of multitasking.
Yeah, lots and lots.
Yes.
With confidentiality, I mean, like me, I still maintain because I work a part-time job. I work a part-time job, too, which I work on Peterson and I have to maintain secret security clearance.
Yep.
Is that, do you have to have one to work in District 11 in HR?
No.
No, none of us have.
Okay.
We, I make sure that every one of my staff signs a confidentiality agreement. It's a very thorough, comprehensive confidentiality agreement, but
Well, we have to do one.
What about background check? That's your background?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Education has to do full-fledged background checks on everybody because you're working with kids.
What is the hiring process? Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So hiring process for us is that, we post our positions on our website every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So there are constant positions going up every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You apply through there. We require that you apply through there because that's the way then we move you through our system if we choose to hire you. So you have to start there. All of the applications come through HR. Our HR department is broke up into a couple of different groups. So depending on which position it is, it goes to a certain recruiter. They screen and then they send those positions off if they meet the minimum qualifications to the hiring managers. Then the hiring manager, then it's out of HR's hand at that point. The hiring manager is then responsible for screening those applications and deciding on who they're going to interview. And then they call those candidates, they set up the interviews, you come in, you do that interview. In District 11, we have a lot, if not almost all, of our interviews are done in a panel kind of format. So you might come into a room with 3, 4, 5, 6 different people at times. And we do sort of a panel type of interview where we round robin some questions at you. Sometimes it's just one interview, sometimes it's 2. Sometimes it starts with a phone screen, then it's a face-to-face, and then it's a final. It really just depends on the position. Sometimes it depends on the amount of candidates that we have, and we will do phone screens to sort of pare that down to the people we're going to bring in. And then once a hiring decision is made, the hiring manager sends a recommendation for employment to us. We process that. We make sure that they've done the reference checks. We require at least 3 reference checks on all of our employees. Sometimes we'll go with 2 depending on the position and who they can get. Sometimes in food services, we only go with 2 references because it's hard sometimes to get more than that in food services, and so it just depends. And then the employment, the HR office will contact the employee, will offer the position, will set them up if they have to do the background check, the fingerprints, if they have to do what we call a POP, which is a post-offer pre-placement exam, similar to a physical. Not all of our positions require that, but certain ones do depending on lifting requirements and so forth. And then we schedule a hire date. And then you come in, you do an onboarding process with us where you complete all of your new hire paperwork. And then we set up a start date where you set with the hiring manager. And then we've been working very, very hard, Karey in particular, in trying to really establish some onboarding processes for when they get into that department or when they get into that school. Because the last thing that we want to happen is for someone to walk into a new school and they'd be like, who are you? What are you doing again? And nobody be even ready for that. No computer setup, no nothing. We want there to be a really nice onboarding process where you come in, you feel welcomed. In human resources, we have a full range of, we take you on a tour. We already ensure that your computer and desk and everything is ready to go. And then we typically have a pretty extensive 1 to 3 or 4 day training plan where you'll go around and you'll meet with all of the other people within HR so that you understand everybody's role and how you will impact them and how they will impact you. So we want other departments to have that too, just so that the employee feels welcome, because that's a part of retention. I don't know if I missed it. Can you with that? I tried to.
How often do you find yourself hiring outside of your organization?
A lot. I would say sometimes in certain areas, we pull from within. I'll be honest, sometimes in the clerical ranks, sometimes there's a lot of hiring from within. Food services, transportation, crafts, those are almost always outside. Education assistants, that is probably one of our biggest issues right now in recruitment. We just can't find them. So we're looking everywhere. Bus drivers, we're looking everywhere. I need bus drivers desperately. So it just varies from department.
Within your department, so HR, are you open to hiring, individuals who maybe don't have a HR degree but have another degree?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. And we have some that don't have any degrees. Our HR receptionist position that doesn't require a degree. And so sometimes some of our other positions don't require degrees. We like them, but we don't require them. So. Great question. That's been great.
All is quiet on the.
It's outside.
Yeah.
For your company tuition reimbursement program, do you guys, is that kind of open to what the employee would want to go to school for, or do you guys recommend specific? So like for banking, for instance, they would probably pay for an employee to go back to school specifically for accounting.
Yeah.
Something that deals within their organization. Are you guys pretty open to what that employee would want to go get a degree for?
So, this, our program is run from our professional development department. So as part of that process, really the request for those funds is for the employee to identify how that career or that educational program is going to benefit their career. So we don't necessarily limit or tell people what type of program they have to go into. We just want to know, how is it going to benefit you?
Sure.
And so as long as you can make a case as an employee to say, hey, I'm an educational assistant, I want to go maybe become a CNA, or I want to look at the CNA route. Well, there's a link to that, because a lot of our educational assistants have to do, types of feedings for our special ed students. So there is a link to that. So as long as they can make that case to say, here's why it'll benefit me here in District 11, then it'll be approved.
Good question. Thanks, guys.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.